Thanks for joining me today in conversations with leaders who are using the Enneagram as a leadership tool and a tool for personal growth and development. Today I'm speaking with Jan Berthold. Jan is an author and an insurance professional who started an insurance brokerage firm from scratch and won numerous awards. She tells a great story of an Enneagram Type 3 becoming self-aware. And now for our conversation. I'm delighted to be speaking today with Jan Berthold. Jan is an author, and her most recent work is the 80/20 CFO, the guide to making strategic transformation in your company. Jan is an insurance professional with Heffernan Insurance Brokers, and before that she started an insurance brokerage firm from scratch. It was recognized by the Business Journal as one of the fastest growing companies in Santa Clara County for 8 years, as well as being listed as one of the top 10 women-owned businesses and top privately held companies for 9 years. Jan also serves on the board of fellows for Santa Clara University, and Jan is very familiar with the Enneagram, and I'm eager to learn more how she's used this powerful system as a leadership tool. So Jan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Matt.
So I just want to start off and I'd like you to share with the audience how and when did you first discover the Enneagram?
Well, I was in a type A modification class for probably 15 years. I wanted to be more type B. I thought I was way out of control. And I just didn't want to be that way for my family and my kids and model that. So the instructor or the moderator for my type A modification group was Dr. Jenna Price. And it just turned out that Dr. Jenna Price partnered with Dr. Milton Friedman, who wrote the book Type A Behavior in Your Heart. And she was an Enneagram expert, and she took his book and her knowledge of the Enneagram and merged them into a whole practice that was amazing. How she showed how people had type A behavior and how it related to the Enneagram. And then she wrote a book called The Enneagram and Type A Behavior, I believe it is. She has since passed away. And I tried to find the book and I couldn't even find it on Amazon. I was hoping I could show you a copy of it because it was an amazing book, the way she correlated the Enneagram with the pitfalls of type A behavior. And it just added so much depth and richness to the whole experience to be able to bring that Enneagram in. And of course, she knew every single person. It was an all women's group, and there were like 14 of us. And she knew every single one of us, what our buttons were, what our pitfalls were. She was incredible. She was brilliant. And so that's my experience with the Enneagram.
That is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at type A behaviors through the lens of the Enneagram and
Mm-hmm.
how each one of the types can come out and express that type A behavior. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you do find that book, let me know because
I
I
know.
definitely
I'll
want
have
to
to.
read that.
I know. I can't find it anywhere. So,
So, yeah. So, as you were going through that process, what did you discover about yourself that you may not have known or appreciated before?
well, she nailed it, and the Enneagram nailed it. Basically, I'm a performer, and I always have this feeling in myself that I'm not good enough just the way I am, that I have to perform, and I could see that when I was growing up. I always had to get the best grades. I always had to be the smartest. I always had to be the best. And it's like I had this inner hold inside of me that I just wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough for me just to be here. I had to perform. And then I was also the oldest of 5 children. And so that all played into it. So that's what I learned.
Wow, wow. And what Enneagram type did you land on as you went through that process?
Well, the performer is the
And
one.
that's type 8, is that?
Yeah, I think it's 8. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also had a little bit of the perfectionist, which of course feeds into it. And I probably need to go back and refresh my memory, but that's what I remember.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, a lot of those type A behaviors, there's a lot of overlap between type 3 and type 8.
Mhm.
And, performer that's a little bit of ambiguous word too. The 8 is often called, the asserter, and the 3 is the achiever. So the performer, where does that land? So it's
Mhm.
interesting what words we use to describe the different types. But
Mhm.
but you're pretty confident that you landed on the type 8 behaviors.
But yeah, maybe it was the achiever. I mean, achiever sounds more like the performer to me. Always
Right.
having always this relentless need to perform, to achieve, to be better, to, you know, be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. I still have that.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe you're actually the type 3,
Hmm.
that achiever that has that relentless drive to
Hmm.
success.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's exactly it.
yeah, yeah. And so now, as a leader, you brought the Enneagram into the workspace, and so
Mhm.
how did you use the Enneagram with your team?
Okay, so when I owned my company, I did the Enneagram on everyone in the company. And it was so interesting because I had one person who was like my right hand person. She totally ran the back office. She was like a superwoman, and she was the giver. And it was really enlightening for her and for me to nail that down. And she could see how she would give, and then she'd get resentful.
Right,
Something would
right.
trigger, somebody didn't appreciate it, or whatever. And it was like that. And this is something that she learned and I learned. And so that helped. And then we had another person who was, the three of us were really leading the agency. She was a total off the wall, I mean, total perfectionist.
Okay.
And so, in retrospect, we put her in charge of some things that probably didn't make sense because of her perfectionism. Her standards were so high for everyone. And it made her frustrated, and it made us frustrated. So, in retrospect, I probably should have not made her in charge of all of our procedures and making sure that everybody towed the line. But those are things you learn in retrospect.
Right, right. Because she'll take that to heart.
Oh
Make sure.
man, did she ever? Yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So we needed you, Matt, back then to we needed your teamwork 9.0 book, but it didn't exist back then. So
Yeah. Well, and the Enneagram in general, it's such a great tool for um, one, helping us understand these dynamics, but then giving us a vocabulary
mhm.
to talk about it with our
Yeah,
teammates, right? Because now
exactly.
now we have a common language that we can work through these things, and
Hmm.
and it's no longer so personal. It becomes more of this, oh yeah, this is my main dynamic, and this is
Hmm.
what I'm doing, and you can talk about it a little more objectively.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned too, sounds like the giver is the type 2,
Hmm.
and it's really common for type 2s and type 3s to team up and
Oh.
work together, because they're very complementary, whereas the 3, is just so focused on getting stuff done and achieving,
Hmm.
and sometimes you can lose track of essentially what people are feeling in the environment, whereas the giver, the type 2, is really tuned into that.
Yeah, and she was.
Yeah, and then you know, she could give you some feedback on,
Yeah.
hey, you know, let's take care of this or that, which, you know, if it has something to do with feelings, it might be in your blind spot where, you know, it's, you know, bright red flag to her, and by teaming up you can really complement each other and make sure that, you know, everybody is taken care of, not only getting the job done, but their emotional needs are also being taken care of as well, which can be very important.
Yeah, and that's totally true, and that's exactly how it played out.
Right, right. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's great that you were able to, you know, use the Enneagram to come to those conclusions, and then just develop even a stronger bond together. And
Yeah,
that,
we
you
did.
know,
We were amazing together.
oh, that is great. That's
Yeah.
great. So, Jan, tell me, what advice would you give to other leaders of your same type, type 3?
Um, it's really hard to change the way you are sometimes, but I think it's really important to do the work and to realize that you don't always have to be number one, and that you're great just the way you are. My daughter reminds me of this all the time. And just, you know, take more time to meditate, to think, to be more reflective, I think. And the Enneagram and this type A modification class really helped me. It changed my whole journey and changed my relationships in so many positive ways. So they kind of worked hand in hand.
Yeah. And that's great. Also, that you have brought your daughter on this journey as well, and she's being supportive of you and
Mhm.
giving you some feedback. Mom,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you don't need to do, you know, all of that today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's her. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we have a similar dynamic in our family, so
Uh-huh.
I'm very well aware of this.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Jan. I really appreciate your sharing your stories and that insight, especially that powerful story of really understanding, as you know, that type 3, type A achiever, how important it is to, you know, recognize that tendency in yourself, and to learn to, you know, just end up being at peace with yourself so you're
Hmm.
not so driven all the time,
Right.
and influencing all the relationships around you. So thank
Hmm.
you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for writing the book. It's great.
Oh
It's
yes,
very.
my pleasure, and I really appreciate how you got so much out of it, and sharing with that. And I hope you can come back again and share more stories about how you use the Enneagram and Teamwork 9.0 as a leader.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. I really enjoyed Jan's story of her using the Enneagram as a tool to understand and manage her type A behaviors, and how her coach was familiar with the Enneagram and gave her the vocabulary to understand and address those issues. And I also appreciated the story that she told about the relationship she developed at work with a type 2, who she called a giver, who's the external emotional type, somebody who's very in touch with their emotions, and how teaming up with the type 2 can be a very complementary relationship for a type 3. If you found this helpful, please click on the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and get notifications of future episodes. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Thanks again.